You ever want to go back in time and give the past you some advice? Well, today I'm visiting my former self and helping her fix one of the first vegan and gluten-free baking recipes she created. Let's get baking. Today I'm sharing with you an old recipe that I came across from when I first tried to create a vegan and gluten-free chocolate chip cookie. Past me had some pretty good ideas, but present me has a bit more wisdom that may improve this cookie. When I first became vegetarian and then vegan, I was really into baking. I was about, maybe 20 years ago. And chocolate chip cookies were my favorite thing. So I tried to naturally make my own vegetarian chocolate chip cookie, and that came out really well. Then I made my own vegan chocolate chip cookie, and that came out pretty well. Then I became gluten-free, and we all know that that's just a little bit more challenging. And again, this was 20 years ago, so I experimented. I had this little book that I created. I guess this was kind of like my little recipe book. I mean, it has some scraps of different recipes in it and some things I wrote. It's kind of funny. I'll just give you a little peek quick, because I don't want to give away all the secrets. But I was looking through this and I found my chocolate chip cookie recipe, and it's handwritten here. I have horrible handwriting. And I'm looking over this recipe and I was like, wow, what was I thinking? And does this recipe still hold up? So I did go ahead and bake some of these cookies. I'm gonna show you these. So I went ahead and did a trial with using my exact recipe, and I'll go over it with you. But this is what we got. A very tasty cookie, I will say. However, has a lot of things wrong with it. For one, you can already see, watch. It just is so soft. I probably loved that part of it when I made it, like, wow, it's like a home-baked soft cookie. But this is really not how a cookie's supposed to be. And it's very flat, it's spread a lot, obviously. But again, it is tasty. I did eat a couple of these, and actually, my boyfriend and I made ice cream sandwiches with these because this is like the perfect texture for something like that. But for a chocolate chip cookie, it is not. So I'm gonna go over that recipe with you, and we're gonna experiment together. We're gonna have some fun and see if I can recreate this with the wisdom I have now and make a better chocolate chip cookie. So let's go over this little handwritten, passed on, very little knowledge of how to make a good cookie. I've got 1/3 cup of margarine. Okay, sounding all right. But then I have written here a cup of brown sugar and 1/2 cup of agave / honey. So back then I used to love honey. So this was kind of like my honey chocolate chip cookie, and it tastes really good, but that's a lot of sugar right there, which is probably why that cookie is also flimsy. The sugar, the margarine ratio is not matching up, and then it's only 2 cups of flour and then 1/2 cup of bean flour, garbanzo bean flour. I don't think those really balance, which is probably why our cookie is so spread and so, it has baking soda and baking powder. That's also too much leavening probably. So we're going to go ahead and alter this a lot. Well, let's get started. So first, I'm just gonna put this in a bowl. We're gonna use my KitchenAid bowl because it's bigger, but I don't think I'm even gonna need that. We're gonna just stir this stuff together. We're gonna take the gluten-free flour, and this time we're going to just we're gonna keep with the 2 cups. And then I do like what the bean flour does. It gives it a nice flavor and it gives it some soft texture. So we are gonna keep with the 1/2 cup of the garbanzo bean flour or chickpea flour. Just add that all together. Now for some of the spices, this is kind of funny to me. I do have cinnamon in this recipe. It's not really very common to have in your chocolate chip cookie. I had a bit of a memory of loving cinnamon back then, so it makes sense. So I'm gonna keep that in. It's a teaspoon of cinnamon, and then we have a teaspoon of salt, and I also have only 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda, and our baking powder, we cut back to 1.5 teaspoons. So let's get that in there. Let's just do a quick little combination. Yeah, you don't really see cinnamon in cookies. I mean, maybe some recipes have a little bit of cinnamon in them, but it's not very common. It's usually for like warmer bakes, like fall pumpkin dishes. but I think I added cinnamon almost everything back then. Next, we're gonna add our brown sugar. We are definitely not gonna do the 1 cup of brown sugar that my original recipe called for. I cut it way back. This is 1/3 cup of brown sugar. I'm just gonna add that in and also give that a little whisk in. And we're going to add the agave. I'm not using honey. And the agave, we're gonna keep that the same, 1/2 cup, since we cut our brown sugar back drastically. I think it's fine to keep the agave the same. And now I'm going to add our butter. I kept the butter the same as well. I think because we've cut back the sugar, add a little more flour, the butter ratio is fine. So we're doing 1/3 cup and it's melted. So I've used vegan butter and my preference is Earth Balance, but any vegan butter should do. And I'm gonna give that a little whisk just to make sure we get all that. I'll let you see here. And now we're going to add plant milk. This is almond milk. And originally this was 1/4 cup and I kept that the same as well. So let's just get that right in there. I don't think adding any more or less would do too much of a difference. So now I'm going to switch over to this spatula and just get it all blended. And already I can tell you from when I made that trial version, the dough was so sticky and just really strange. And this is already looking more like what we want a cookie dough to look like. Soft enough to ball it up. Let's get this fully blended before we add the last ingredient, which is our chocolate chips. Okay, it's looking pretty good. Yeah, this is looking more like what I want the dough to look like. Now, the other funny thing about my old recipe was I have 12 ounces of chocolate chips in here. And I just thought that seems like a ridiculous amount of chocolate chips. Usually it's like maybe 8 ounces. But let me just show you again the cookies that recipe yielded. Now that I see them after I bake them, I was like, oh, that makes sense because you need all the chocolate chips to fill up that real estate of the cookie that spreads so much. It's probably why I put so many chocolate chips in. But since this recipe is not going to spread as much, the dough is holding up a lot firmer, I'm still gonna do a good amount of chocolate chips, but I'm only gonna do a cup. And I actually switched it up to chunks instead of chips, so it would hold up more space as well. Just something a little different. I usually do traditional chocolate chip style, but let's have some fun. So let's get this all blended. I mean, I'm telling you, I'm already so happy with how this looks. Now with this texture, so it is sticky. We could try to ball this, but I probably can guarantee you that this won't stay in a ball shape. So there will be some spreading. We have a few options. You can put this in the freezer or the fridge for a little bit and let it firm up, and that will prevent your cookie from spreading too much. Or we can go ahead and accept that it's gonna spread a little bit and just do like a little drop cookie and see how that comes out. Maybe I'll do both, but for now, let's start with doing one batch, just doing a drop cookie, and we'll see how those come out. Okay, I've lined a cookie sheet with parchment paper. We're going to just spoon out a little bit here. And because I'm not sure how much this is gonna spread, I'm not gonna put too many on per pan. We're gonna start off maybe just a couple of rows of 2. Just do like 3 rows. Because I don't mind if it spreads a little bit. I just wanna make sure I have the space for it. I really wish I would have showed you guys what the dough looked like from the past me version because it was not as good as this one. All right, so we've got about 6 cookies here. We're gonna try this method out, starting with about 10 minutes. Another funny thing about past me, when I read my instructions, one, I didn't have how much the oven was set to, so it could have been 450. I'm gonna go with 350. The reason I think I may have said 450 was because the cook time was 5 minutes. I don't know how that's possible. So we're gonna go ahead and guesstimate 10, maybe 12 minutes at 350. Hey. Ooh, interesting. Okay. These look pretty good. I mean, they look way better than the other ones. I don't mind that they're like thick. They're probably gonna be a little cakey. But let's try another method, knowing what we know now. We'll let these cool and then we'll try to roll them out and flatten them and see how that batch comes out. So let's see if we can get a flatter version if we do roll them out and flatten them a bit with our hands. So I think I can ball these a bit since it's sat for a minute. Might be a little too big. Maybe about that size. We'll still do the same amount. We'll do 6. These are looking good. I think judging by what we saw with the previous batch, I think now that we've gotten a little more of a cookie shape here, when they cook, we'll get a better aesthetic result. So let's get these in the oven. All right, so clearly there's a difference between methods here. This was the first one we did where we just spooned it out onto the tray. A little ugly, but still looks tasty. And then this one's more aesthetically pleasing. We balled this one out and smushed it down a bit. And you can see we got pretty perfectly round cookies, but they all look pretty good. Nice and brown at the bottom here. I like that it's kind of fat and looks cakey, but also it's crisp on the outside. So I imagine it's gonna taste really good. Let's try them and see which version tastes better, if there is a difference. So let's try this little guy here. It's still kind of warm. Oh, you can see right there, the chocolate is still melty, which some people are a big fan of. I like when my cookies are set up. That's a weird preference of mine, but I'm still gonna try this because it looks really good. Very soft. Now it's very cakey, which I don't mind. Makes for an interesting cookie though. But let's try our other shape here and see what that does for the texture. I'm just gonna grab this guy. Again, it's still really warm, so texture could change when it cools. It's funny how the shape of a cookie can change the taste. So it's still very soft, but because it's more flattened, you get a little more crisp on the outside, and it's really good. Let's break it open and see what that looks like. Oh yeah. Highly recommend using the chunks, not the chips, for these cookies if you're gonna do this recipe. Yeah, I'd have to say the winner is rolling it out, balling it up. Yeah. Oh, and one other note is that the time it took to make these was about 12 minutes. I wouldn't go over that unless they really look underdone, because I feel like they're so soft that you might overcook them. So yeah. Hold up, that did not work. The cookies were great right out of the oven, as I suspected, but the next day, a bit dry and crumbly. However, I do have a few more tweaks and modifications that's gonna take this cookie to the next level. What happens a lot with baking, especially cookies, is it's deceiving. Right out of the oven, a cookie, especially a chocolate chip cookie, will taste amazing. Why? Because there's melted chocolate in there. So it happens a lot where it's gonna taste really good when it first comes out, ooey gooey, but the next day, a little off if it's not the perfect cookie. So that's what happened with that first batch. It was just like warm and gooey, and I thought, okay, I had a suspicion that it wasn't gonna be great, but I think I know what happened. So since I'm using an old recipe from the past, I got to thinking, what was I thinking? And I realized that was what I was going for, a really cakey, fluffy cookie, just not really thinking about how that would be the next day. So then I realized, okay, maybe that bean flour is the culprit. So what we're gonna try today is we're gonna stick with our 2 cups of all-purpose flour. Let's put that in the bowl. And then we're gonna add another flour, not bean, but this time a flour that's gonna work more with this cookie, and that's almond flour. So I'm just gonna use 1/4 cup of almond flour. All right, let me just get that blended first. The almond flour is going to just work better with the all-purpose flour. It's gonna let all of our wet ingredients absorb more. I have a suspicion that bean flour was just working against us. It makes things very soft, which is probably why I used it originally, but it was just making this particular cookie really too soft and too dry, taking all the moisture out of it. Let's add next some more remaining dry ingredients. I've got 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. We have 1 teaspoon of sea salt. I have 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda. And then for baking powder, we're gonna use 1½ teaspoons. So that's all right here. Let's put that all in here with our flours and give that a little mix. The cinnamon's optional. I honestly think it brings a really unique little twist to the chocolate chip cookie, but if you think that's too strange, you could omit it. It's not gonna affect the recipe, or even just do 1/2 teaspoon. All right, so let's put this aside. We've got our flours all mixed together. I'm gonna get another bowl. We're going to stick with the brown sugar. We're gonna stick with the 1/3 cup, but I'm gonna also add an additional 1/4 cup of white sugar to give it a little more balance. Just put that in a bowl. And then the butter is gonna stay exactly the same. The 1/2 cup of melted butter is a perfect ratio. So let's just get that in the bowl. And I don't wanna mix any bit of that delicious melted butter. So I'm gonna scoop that out here. And we're gonna stick with the agave. We've got 1/3 cup of agave, and just put that right in with your butter and your sugar. Okay, still very easy. We swapped out a few ingredients, add a little more and a little less of some things, but still a very fairly easy recipe to put together. So I'm gonna whisk this. And whisk it enough so that you're seeing your butter and sugar become one. You don't want a layer of butter on top. You want it to become like this paste. Yes, nice and gooey. We're gonna go ahead and bring back our flour. And now we'll combine with a wooden spoon. Just dump that right in. Make sure you get all of it. Bring back my spatula. Okay. Just go slow here, because it's going to combine very slowly. You can see the dough is forming really nice. Smush it down a bit. And once you have it mostly combined, where it looks like clumpy, sandy, brown clumps, we can add a little more moisture with 2 tablespoons of our plant milk. So I have 2 tablespoons measured out here already, and I'm just gonna put that right in. You can finish combining this now a lot easier. If you want, you can get your hands in there, but just have some patience with your wooden spoon otherwise. And I would definitely say use a spoon. If you use the mixer, it might overmix it, make it a little too goopy. You want it to be a little bit dough-like. Okay. Now our last ingredient, we're sticking with the 1 cup of the chocolate chunks. I did like a heaping cup, so it's a little bit over. Let's get that all mixed. Oh, one more thing I almost forgot is vanilla extract. And I don't think we put vanilla extract in this first trials, but we're gonna definitely put it in this one. 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. And since I'm adding the liquid in now, I'm gonna go ahead and put some gloves on so I can easily mix this together. I mean, something about just getting your hands in there is a little bit easier. It's a perfect texture. I can already tell how these are going to turn out. And look at that chocolate chip ratio. That looks amazing. That chocolate dough ratio is looking perfect. And so whether you're mixing by hand or by spoon, this is what you want. You want it to be shiny and sticky, but you can still, you know, make shape out of it. This is perfect. If it feels too loose, you can put it in the fridge for about 10 minutes, up to 15. I think though, this is fine. I don't even think I have to freeze this because I can mold this into shape. So let's clean up our workspace and get a tray so that we can get these in the oven. All right, our pan is lined. I went the extra step and I put some oil on here. You don't have to. I just had some weird parchment paper that didn't seem like it was like waxed enough for my taste. And you know me, I'm pretty anal about making sure things don't stick. So my pan has parchment, a little bit of oil, and then let's go ahead and ball these cookies. And I'm gonna be pretty indulgent with these cookies. I'm gonna make a nice size ball. And because of this texture, I don't believe we have to push them down. I think they're gonna spread just enough, but maybe I'll just give it a little help. And since we're not quite sure, I'm gonna give it enough space to grow if it needs to. So yeah, about that size. So we'll just do 2, just put 6 on this pan, which I know seems crazy. I could probably fit a lot more, but let's just test this out first. A tiny little push. All right. So we're starting off with these 6. We're gonna put them in the oven for about 10 to 12 minutes. Want to check them just to make sure they get brown around the edges, and it's gonna be at 350. So here I am next day. I wanted to give these cookies enough time to cool. The last time they were just a little too warm and deceiving. The chocolate was melty, made me think the cookie was gonna be soft. I wanted to make sure that they set up next day so that I wasn't tricked this time. So let's give these a try and see if this is not the perfect chocolate chip cookie. First, the appearance, it looks great. It's perfectly round. It's pretty thick, might be thicker than your normal chocolate chip cookie, but I mean, looks like a decadent chocolate chip cookie. So, I'm going to break it open. All right, I could smell already. It smells delicious. Yeah, look at that. So it still has that cakiness that we got and wanted from that first attempt, but now it seems set up a lot more and it seems more like a cookie. So let's give it a bite. That is good. That tastes like those almost home type cookies from the store, you know? Very soft, like a soft baked cookie. The chocolate is perfectly set up. It's not dry, it's not crumbling like that first attempt was. It's soft and squishy and oh, it's just perfect. There you have it. There is no wrong way to make a chocolate chip cookie. It's just that sometimes there are better ways. And even if that takes 2 or 3 times, it's still gonna be worth the try. Let me know if you have any recipes from your past that you've revisited and updated. Thanks so much for traveling back in time with me. See ya!